In the annals of history, few names resonate with the power and majesty of Rome. For centuries, it was more than a city, more than an empire. It was the heart of the civilized world, a beacon of order, law, and culture that stretched from the windswept shores of Britannia to the sun-scorched sands of Mesopotamia. Its legions marching in lockstep were the architects of an era of unprecedented peace, the Pax Romana. Its engineers built aqueducts that carried life-giving water across valleys and roads that bound the empire together. Its senators, robed in white, debated philosophy and governance in forums of polished marble. In this age of glory, Rome seemed eternal, an empire built not just of stone and steel, but of an idea, the idea that humanity could achieve greatness, that order could triumph over chaos. This was Rome at its zenith, vast, organized, and seemingly unstoppable. The eagle standard, a symbol of its might, cast a long shadow over a world it had conquered and transformed. It was a civilization so dominant, so absolute in its power, that the very thought of its collapse seemed impossible. Yet, within the gilded halls of power and the bustling streets of the capital, the seeds of its eventual decline were already being sown. But even the mightiest structures can develop cracks in their foundations. Beneath the veneer of imperial splendor, a slow, creeping decay began to take hold. The very success that had fueled Rome's expansion became a source of its weakness. The Senate, once a bastion of republican virtue, devolved into a theater of personal ambition and political paralysis. Corruption became endemic, with public offices sold to the highest bidder and justice becoming a commodity. The gap between the fabulously wealthy elite, who indulged in extravagant feasts and decadent lifestyles, and the impoverished masses grew into an unbridgeable chasm. The empire's vast territory, a testament to its military might, was now a crippling burden. The cost of maintaining its legions, defending thousands of miles of frontiers, and administering its diverse provinces began to drain the treasury. To pay for its enormous expenses, the government debased its currency, sparking runaway inflation that crippled the economy. Farms were abandoned as taxes became unbearable, and the once thriving trade routes that were the empire's lifeblood grew perilous. Rome was overstretched, its resources thinning, its spirit fraying. The foundations were trembling, not from an external shock, but from the weight of its own immense, unwieldy success. The glorious dream of Rome was slowly, almost imperceptibly, beginning to fade. While Rome contended with its internal ailments, a storm was gathering beyond its borders. For generations, the peoples the Romans called barbarians had lived along the frontiers of the Rhine and Danube rivers. Tribes like the Goths, Vandals, and Franks, once disparate and disorganized, were now coalescing into formidable forces. Driven by climate change, internal conflicts, and the pressure of migratory peoples from the east, they began to push against the empire's boundaries with increasing desperation and ferocity. The Roman legions, once the undisputed masters of the battlefield, now faced a new kind of enemy, tenacious, mobile, and fighting not for conquest but for survival. Epic clashes erupted in the dense, snowy forests of Germania and across the sweeping plains of Pannonia. Roman discipline and engineering met the raw, untamed fury of Gothic warriors. Though the legions often won the day, each victory came at a terrible cost in blood and treasure. The frontiers, once secure lines on a map, became porous, bleeding zones of constant conflict. Villages were burned, fields were ravaged, and the sense of security that had defined Roman life for centuries began to evaporate. The empire was fighting a war on too many fronts, its strength being slowly sapped by 1,000 cuts. The barbarian threat was no longer a distant problem. It was knocking at the gates of civilization itself. Faced with a crisis that threatened to tear the empire apart, a series of powerful emperors attempted to steer the ship of state back on course. Diocletian divided the empire to make it more manageable, while Constantine the Great sought to unify it under a new religion, Christianity, and a new capital. He moved the heart of the empire eastward, establishing Constantinople, a new Rome on the strategic shores of the Bosphorus. This monumental decision effectively split the empire in two. While the Eastern Roman Empire, with its wealth and strategic location, would prosper, the Western Roman Empire became increasingly vulnerable, isolated, and drained of resources. The inexorable slide toward collapse accelerated. In the year 410 AD, the unthinkable happened. The city of Rome, which had not been breached by a foreign enemy in 800 years, was sacked by the Visigoths under their king, Alaric. The psychological shockwave reverberated across the known world. Though the city would recover, the event shattered the myth of Roman invincibility. It was a symbolic death blow. The streets, once symbols of order, ran with fire and blood. Priceless statues, testaments to centuries of artistic genius, were toppled and smashed. Citizens who had known nothing but peace fled in terror. More sacks would follow, and in 476 AD, the last Western Roman emperor, a young boy ironically named Romulus Augustulus, was quietly deposed. The Western Roman Empire was no more. It did not fall in a single cataclysmic battle, but rather crumbled under the weight of political failure, economic collapse, and relentless external pressure. The light of civilization in the West, it seemed, had been extinguished. But the story of Rome did not end in the smoking ruins of its western capital. As the West fractured into a mosaic of successor kingdoms, the flame of Roman civilization was kept alive, burning brightly in the East. The Eastern Roman Empire, which we now call the Byzantine Empire, endured for another 1,000 years. Constantinople grew into the largest and wealthiest city in Christendom, a dazzling center of trade, art, and learning. Its scholars carefully preserved the great literary and scientific works of ancient Greece and Rome, safeguarding a precious inheritance for future generations. Its artists perfected the art of the mosaic, creating shimmering, golden depictions of saints and emperors that still inspire awe today. The Corpus Juris Civilis, a codification of Roman law commissioned by the Emperor Justinian, would become the foundation for many legal systems in the modern world. In its magnificent churches, like the Hagia Sophia, its architects pushed the boundaries of engineering, creating domes that seemed to float between heaven and earth. While the West entered a period of fragmentation, the Byzantine Empire stood as a direct continuation of Roman power, culture, and administration, a Christianized, Greek-speaking Roman Empire that acted as a shield for Europe and a repository of classical knowledge. Rome had not truly fallen. It had transformed. Today, we walk among the echoes of Rome. Its language forms the bedrock of our own. Its legal principles underpin our concepts of justice. Its architectural innovations still inspire the buildings we inhabit. Standing in the shadow of the Colosseum or tracing the path of an ancient aqueduct, we are reminded of a civilization that achieved extraordinary things. The fall of Rome serves as a timeless and humbling lesson. It teaches us that no empire, no matter how powerful, is eternal. It reveals the costs of unchecked ambition, the dangers of internal division, and the fragility of a complex society. It shows us that greatness is not a permanent state, but a constant struggle to maintain balance and adapt to a changing world. Yet, from the ashes of its collapse, a new world was born. The fall of Rome was not the end of civilization, but a painful, chaotic, and ultimately fertile transition. It was the end of one chapter and the beginning of countless others. Empires rise and fall, but their stories, their triumphs, and their lessons endure forever, whispered in the ruins and written into the very fabric of our world. Thank you for joining us on this journey through one of history's most epic sagas. If you found this story compelling, please consider liking this video, sharing it with others who love history, and subscribing to our channel for more deep dives into the events that shaped our world. Your support helps us continue to bring these stories to life. We'll see you next time.